Dave and Rebecca Brown, a couple married for 12 years, spent an hour and a half in their first court-ordered three-way consultation. Dave was only present because of his lawyer's insistence. Post-nuptial agreements were a relatively new phenomenon in the legal system, and Dave's lawyer wanted to make sure all the I's were dotted and crossed. The previous 90 minutes had been spent talking between the consultant and Rebecca, while Dave sat with his lips pursed, holding a notepad and pen. From time to time, he wrote something down in a notebook. Rebecca's pleas touched the heart of seasoned counselor Jenny, who was also impressed by the way Rebecca accepted all the blame, allaying any fears Dave had that her infidelity meant he had failed her in some way. Rebecca also avoided many of the bullshit excuses that people in her situation inevitably come up with. Jenny was glad that Rebecca followed this approach, since it was Jenny who had recommended this approach when they met for a solo session 3 days before. Rebecca finally fell silent. The only sounds in the room were the faint ticking of the analog clock on the wall to their side and the scratching of Dave taking notes on a notepad on his knee. Jenny let the silence linger. Experience has taught her that most people like to fill the gaps in uncomfortable situations. 1 minute, 2. Jenny looked at Rebecca, who opened her mouth as if to say something. Jenny shook her head slightly. Rebecca heeded the subtle sign and closed her mouth. Jenny decided to give Dave 1 more minute. If he remained silent, Jenny was going to suggest that Dave seriously think about what his sincerely repentant wife was going through and educate him on general statistics. Far from being once a cheater, always a cheater, those who were caught cheating and witnessed the devastation it caused to those they cared about often became incredibly loyal. She waited. Dave stirred, a slight smile playing on his face. Okay, Jenny thought, and the corners of her mouth lifted into a half smile. It was usually better if she could get the injured party to voluntarily contribute rather than force them to do so. Well done, Rebecca. I'll give you 9 out of 10 for this. Jenny's smile disappeared. She was embarrassed, and judging by the look on Rebecca's face, she was embarrassed too. Jenny came to her senses first. So, Mr. Brown, there is no need to be rude. Your wife has exposed her innermost parts here. As you know, I met with her privately earlier this week, and she is truly humiliated that you caught her doing this and very devastated by the pain she caused you. As she said today, her colleague was an experienced Lothario, and she simply wasn't strong enough to resist his advances. I can assure you that with both of your blessings, if you forgive her, I can work with her to give her the strength and knowledge enough to ensure that this never happens again. Dave just sighed. They say that you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. I don't take the hint, Mr. Brown. Are you saying that your wife can't learn to protect herself and therefore your feelings in the future? No, not at all, Miss Parkinson. I meant, how long did you study at university? 4 years? Actually 6, I finished my master's degree. 6 years, yes, and you've obviously learned everything, damn it. Offended, Jenny straightened up. Excuse me, Mr. Brown, that was rude and completely inappropriate. Do you think so? Anticipating further protests, Dave pulled an electronic device from his pocket and pressed a button. Rebecca's voice came from the device, begging for forgiveness. She swore it was a one-time mistake and that he, Dave, could take it to the bank. They listened as she admitted how much she had hurt him and how hurt she was that she had caused him so much pain that she had witnessed. And then Jenny's indignant voice interrupted loudly. Do you understand how unpleasant and inappropriate it is to record our session? Not only is it unpleasant, but I believe that it is completely illegal in this state to record someone without their approval and consent, and I certainly do not intend to agree with that. It's okay because Margaret agreed. Jenny was too angry and embarrassed to notice that Rebecca had just lowered her chin to her chest and was successfully imitating a beetroot. Jenny couldn't remember when she had been more offended. Who the hell is Margaret? She was our consultant 2 years ago when I last caught Rebecca cheating. It was recorded then. My wife is a convincing bitch, isn't she? She fooled me then, that's for sure. Rebecca continued to look at the floor at her feet. Dave watched with satisfaction as he and Jenny engaged in a silent competition to see who could blush the brightest. Annoyed, Jenny reflected on how thoroughly she had been fooled by the experienced cheater. Perhaps her embarrassment was assuaged by the realization that the reason Rebecca was such a convincing liar was because the first person she convinced with her bullshit was Rebecca herself. Dave took the embarrassed silence of both women as an opportunity to end this farce. "Just so there is no doubt, Rebecca, I will fully honor the terms of the marriage agreement you signed 2 years ago. And this means that you leave my house with only your personal belongings, while leaving behind all the jewelry that I bought you, including the 2 rings that you are wearing now." Dave paused, allowing himself to replay his previous sentence in his head with satisfaction. "In a way, I suppose I should thank you. If I had divorced your ass 2 years ago, the courts would have given you half of everything, and now you won't get anything. And the only cost was that I had to swallow my pride for a while. Don't worry, you didn't hurt me too much this time." Despite what a good counselor says, deep down, I think I knew you would cheat again, and that's why I never became truly emotionally invested in our relationship again. Rebecca was silent, staring at the floor. The depth of the punishment and loss still hadn't sunk into her. Jenny, embarrassed by her naivety, shuddered at the cold dispassion with which Dave behaved. Obviously, he really was as emotionally unperturbed as he claimed, or maybe he was an even better actor than his wife. Neither woman said a word, and the offended husband continued, "Give me 24 hours and I'll put your shit in a box. I don't know where you'll go or what you'll do, but honestly, I don't care. The locks will be changed in an hour, so please don't embarrass us both by knocking on the door. If you try to mobilize your family and our friends against me, the video clips I have of you and your lover will mysteriously end up in everyone you know, and I do mean everyone. I'm sure at least some of them won't be so understanding when they hear you squealing as Clive pinned your ass on our damn marital bed." Dave paused to stop the rapid rise of his violent temper. After a dozen deep breaths, he regained full control. "Once the divorce is final, we can talk about your visit to Alice. Sign the divorce this week, and I'll be generous with the visit. Resist, and you'll only be able to kiss her goodbye." Jenny perked up her ears at these words. Rebecca's head jerked up, her eyes flashing with a mixture of fear and anger. Neither reaction escaped Jenny. Neither in their solo session nor in this joint session did Rebecca mention her daughter. But at the time, she seemed like a typical 21st century narcissist, as self-centered as a spinning top. So focused on what she could lose that everything and anything else faded into the background. Jenny looked back and saw the pain on Rebecca's face as she finally found the words. But, you can't take my little girl away from me. She needs me. I can't live without her." The unbearable pain that Rebecca felt from the words of her soon-to-be ex-husband was written on her distorted features. Jenny thought, if only these idiots had thought about all the consequences of their actions before committing their various crimes, I would be out of a job. She reached out and placed her hand on Rebecca's, hoping to keep her from completely breaking down. Having shown himself to be an emotional dead fish in the eyes of the consultant, Dave spoke completely calmly. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you were, quote, unquote, seduced by an expert. All this is clearly stated in the contract. It says if you screw up again, you'll lose everything, including custody of Alice. But she needs me." "Bullshit, Rebecca. She's 13 years old. I will do everything just as well as you. In any case, this is not the place to air our dirty laundry. You cheated, I took you back, you signed a contract after the wedding, and promised never to stray again. I suspected something was wrong, conducted an investigation, and again caught you playing the fool. Don't commit a crime if you can't handle the consequences, isn't that what they say?" Dave stood up and looked down at his soon-to-be ex-wife, who by this point was kneeling on the floor, her hands clasped in supplication, tears streaming down her face. The anguished expression on her face showed everyone in the room that, perhaps for the first time in this whole sordid affair, she actually felt remorse. The consequences of her impulsive actions were finally becoming clear. Gathering her last strength, Rebecca made a short dash. "You won't take my Alice. I will fight you every step of the way." The consultant stood as a helpless witness to the grin that appeared on Dave's face. "Please do it, slut." My lawyer told me that this was an ironclad agreement and that it would give me the excuse I needed to release my little videos. "Try to show yourself in public after they come out, Rebecca." With these words, the offended husband left the room. Jenny looked at the devastated woman and sighed. She better start now if she wants to prevent a complete mental collapse here, especially if the aforementioned contract is upheld in her husband's favor after the wedding. Having your daughter taken away from you must be every mother's nightmare. She leaned towards the sobbing woman. Dave Brown sat in his car until the adrenaline wore off and his breathing returned to normal. Then he drove home through the supermarket and liquor store, buying a bottle of bourbon for himself and a nice piece of fish for his and Alice's dinner. Salmon was her favorite. Tonight was the beginning of a new stage in their life together. What he did tonight was important. He paused with his hand on the front door knob, determined to stick to his normal routine as best he could, for Alice's sake. Pushing open the door, Dave Brown spoke in a loud voice, well aware of the growing deterioration of Alice's hearing. "Alice, walkie-talkies!" An elderly terrier dog jumped out of its basket and, wagging its tail so hard that its back paws skidded on the floorboards, came to greet its owner. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.